Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's Global Weather Updates here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about potential development in the Western Pacific in the coming 7 to 10 days. So we're going to be looking at the GFS today. We're going to be looking at relative humidity, just to say like how much moisture there is, and obviously the MGO is going to be coming into the Western Pacific. So like May could become actually a very like active month, and we could see some multiple storms and potentially strong ones again, because obviously in my last like video there was Super Typhoon Surigay that like came close to the Versailles region, and in like in my estimates it was around 180 to 185 miles an hour at peak, and then it curved to the north and then started to weaken. So we're going to look at the GFS first, just basically the regular precip rate. So we're going to go through this first. So the GFS shows as the weekend goes on, still nothing much going on. There is a little bit of like disturbance here in like the Philippine Sea, and this is what we have to watch out for. So as we're going into next week, Wednesday, you can see it's developing. It's slowly developing, but in my opinion, and I've seen multiple storms in the Western Pacific, especially in the Philippine Sea, where like it might not show it becomes strong, but then in reality it becomes very strong. Like for example, Goni, as it was coming through, at first it was only forecasted to become a very weak tropical storm, and then it ended up becoming one of the strongest storms in the Western Pacific. Obviously, I don't think it's the strongest, but it was up there. It was like the first peak could be around 200 to 205 miles an hour, but a day or two prior, they were only showing a mid-range tropical storm peak. So it just shows you can't underestimate the Western Pacific. So as we go on, it does develop it. It actually develops it into a potential typhoon. It actually strengthens it in between the Versailles region. So obviously it's clearly avoiding land as much as possible, and it's still getting in, and it's still getting fuel like from the ocean. So it's still intensifying as it's going through the Versailles region. So that's something to watch out for as well. And then as we go into the China Sea here, it actually does develop it as we go in towards the 17th of May and the 18th. It does start developing it, and it becomes a potentially a major typhoon in like China, Hong Kong, Thailand. Like all those areas need to keep an eye on this. And then there's a potential setting storm that could develop. It's in slightly less favorable conditions, because if we see here quickly, there is a bit of dry air to the north, and then if we look at Shia quickly as well, Shia isn't too much of an issue, but it's just dry air mainly. But yeah, as I said, potentially a storm or two could develop in the Western Pacific, and especially the first one could develop in the next 6 to 7 days potentially. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. If you look at wind shear here, as we're going into next weekend here, like so the weekend coming, and then we're going to Sunday and then Monday, it starts to develop, and then Tuesday and then into Wednesday, the 12th of May. You can see shear isn't that bad at all. It's starting to develop a poleward outflow, as you can see here, as it's streaming to the north and then going east. And as we go in towards the end of the week, towards the 14th of May, it does develop it in the Philippine Sea, which like it could happen because there is gaps in between the islands, so it could avoid land as much as possible and still tap into the ocean, like all the fuel and the energy in like the ocean. So there is potential for it to strengthen as it's going through, and it could like strengthen way like so. As it's entering, it's only around a tropical storm, but in my opinion, it could strengthen. But before then, it could just tighten up straight away, and it could intensify rapidly on approach to landfall. So as I say here, as before landfall, I'm going to take a quick sound in here to see what it's looking like. If it does show us, I'll try it one more time. If it doesn't show, then I can't really show. But in my opinion, it's around like 10 to 15 knots, so it ain't extremely favorable, but it's favorable. As you can see, yeah, 30 knots. So as I said, it's around 10 to 13 knots, so it's not too bad. So it can develop. It's not perfect. And as I go into the Chinese Sea, it really does develop it, and it's got a really nice outflow, as you can see. Then if I do another sound in here, let's make it a little bit smaller, see if that works. Should work, yep, it's working. It's around 10 knots now instead of 13, so there's more moisture. So the wind shear's less, so around 10 knots, and the relative humidity is around 93%, which is basically really high. So there is potential for this to become strong. So as I said, if you're in the Visayas region, even Luzon, Mindanao, China, Thailand, if you're in them areas, you really need to keep an eye on the storm. Then relative humidity here. So as we go in towards the 10th and 11th of May, it's got a nice moisture bubble. There is a bit drier to the north and northwest, but it shouldn't really impede anything. Then as we go through the Philippines and into the China Sea, there is a bit drier around, but according to the GFS, it won't interfere that much, and it's waiting landfall potentially in Thailand around the 20th of May. Like, obviously it could change, it might not even develop it, but then it might develop, it might be more north, and it could go more south. So as I said, Mindanao, Visayas, Luzon, Thailand, China, even Taiwan. In those areas, you need to keep an eye, an eye on it. And obviously, from now onwards, the typhoon season is going to start ramping up significantly. And now we're going to go to the ACM vorticity at 850 millibars here. So as we go forward here towards Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, the 13th of May, it doesn't really show anything, as you can see. And as I said, the ACM really struggles with like showing storms like earlier on in its cycle. Like Surrey, it was not showing it, and even when it was quite close, and that like the foreman, like say 4 to 5 days away, the ACM was still iffy on it, and the GFS was obviously showing like a super typhoon, and obviously the GFS was right, and the ACM's been a bit off recently. So I wouldn't pay attention to the ACM as much. I would favour the GFS. I think we'll get something out of it. Will it become a typhoon or a super typhoon? I don't know. Super typhoon? Probably not, but we can't ever rule out. It's the Western Pacific after all. But I think a storm will develop, and it could hit the Philippines, and then potentially into the China Sea, into Thailand, and maybe China. So there is potential for the storm to like rapidly intensify, either in the China Sea or like the Philippine Sea. So there's a lot of potential there. And then now we're gonna go into like what how the oceans are looking in the Western Pacific compared to average. So as well, like Surrey was, there's still a bit of cold pool there from it, but it is starting to recover slightly. And in general around Guam, Mindanao, and like in like the China Sea, it's well above average as well. So that's interesting. And as you say, but this is interesting actually. As we go towards Thailand, it actually does level off the ocean, so the sea temperature actually starts to level off and potentially decline. So it might not really intensify too much on approach. It might intensify initially, but as it gets towards Thailand, it might slow down in intensification, which will be good for land areas concerned. So as I said, Philippines, Mindanao, Luzon, Taiwan, Thailand, China, if you're in them areas, you need to keep an eye on the storm, because it could come your way in the next week to 10 days. Okay guys, I thought I would just give a quick update, and please like and subscribe, and please share it with everyone, and really help us out, and I would really appreciate it. And I'll keep doing updates on this potential storm, and we'll see what's going to happen in the next days ahead. And also there's interest in the Indian Ocean, so I might do updates on that as well. So please like and subscribe, and share my share the video, and I will make another video tomorrow.